John 8:18. Ego sum, qui testimonium perhibeo de me ipso, et testimonium perhibet de me, qui misit me pater. I am he who bears witness concerning myself, and the Father who sent me bears witness concerning me. Now, if you've been following along the last few verses, there's not a lot that's new here in terms of the language that we're using. Here we might note again, testimonium perhibere is an idiom that we find quite frequently in texts of all periods in the Latin language. And finding it with a construction like this, with de and then something indicating a particular person, is really common. Testimonium as a noun is used really sort of in two different ways, broadly speaking. The first way is in the more forensic sense of testimonium, the courtroom sense, testimony or witness, whether oral or written, as one would give in a trial. And the second group of usages is more or less parallel to another Latin word, exemplum. That is testimonium as sort of proof or evidence in a really general sort of way that one can use to bolster or make more convincing an argument, which is the same way you use exempla, right? Exempla are more than just examples. Exempla are case studies that you might cite in the course of making an argument. And very often those can be mythological or historical, depending on the type of argument that's being made in the text that you're looking at. But for testimonium, here we've got the first sense, kind of the forensic sense. Testimonium perhibeo means I bear witness like a person who's party to a case before the law concerning me, myself. And Jesus has just been talking about the law of Moses, which all of this is connected to. We might note, by the way, that you can use testimonium with a bunch of different verbs, not just perhibere. Often it's found with dicere, to give testimony. Often we also find it with dare, or the related redere, to give or render up testimony in a court. Sometimes people are called to give testimony. Vocare ad testimonium is a phrase, an idiom that we find from time to time. And in Cicero and in other authors, we also find a phrase like this, testimonio sit, and then often an accusative infinitive construction. That is a phrase which means, let it be for a testimony. This is the dative of purpose. You can go ahead and look that up in your reference grammar if you haven't seen it in a while or if you've never learned it. But let it be, and this is a jussive subjunctive, let it be for a testimony, for an example, for a proof, that, and then the rest of the sentence can be given. So that's a really common idiom that we see in lots of the best authors throughout the history of Latin literature that you could use if you wanted to, just as a nice way of starting a sentence whenever you want to prove or kind of demonstrate something in a general sense. So hopefully that's given you some idea of how this word could be used, a little snapshot in all sorts of ways. Of course, we don't want to neglect to point out that qui misit me is the same relative clause we had in the last verse. Misit, third person singular, perfect active indicative from mitto, mittere.